Well, good evening, class. This is your Professor Jeff for the role of the design professional. We're going to be going through lecture 10 this evening. It is going to be just the core material, and in the second video, we will provide some application to it. When we meet next time for administrative business, I'm going to get back to you on the surveys that you provided to me on the Google Forms by which you got some extra credit. And what I wanted to do, though, is loop into this discussion about why we do this. And this is oftentimes when we think of athletes starting off at a very young age, go through a series of games and lessons and practices to hopefully make it to the pros. And really, that's what we're doing here when we do leadership practice of getting feedback. And so I appreciate the feedback you give me. I look forward to it and incorporate it into my lectures so that I can do a better job. And I hope that you will continue that tradition as you seek feedback from your colleagues, your clients, your direct reports, and other managers, and overall roll that into your leadership development plan. I'm not going to test you on this. This is just a little bit of a bonus material that we'll be going through in more detail when we get together. So let's get into lesson number 10 and talk about what you have already discussed with the attorneys, and that is the legal elements that make a contract. They are the offer, which is written up in some form of a document. It's the acceptance, and then, of course, followed by consideration. Now, the consideration we oftentimes think of as money, but can it include something like Bitcoin, or clamshells, or loaves of bread? And the answer is yes, because it's considered valuable, and so that would make it a legal element of a contract. But what we're going to focus on is the professional elements of a contract. And these are the things that we as consulting professionals and engineers need to be engaged with. And there's 4 aspects to that. It's the scope, which we'll talk more about what that is. The cost, there's various cost structures. Schedule, what exactly does that mean? And then terms and conditions. So let's get into scope. So what is being provided under the contract? Well, what is it that you're going to design? What are the professional services? It could be the planning of a bridge. Maybe we just want to do a schematic layout of how it's situated over a canyon or over a body of water. The design of a building. How many stories is it? How much square feet should it have? Specifications on a computer system for a new fighter, or maybe environmental assessment for fuel tank storage. In the realm of construction and manufacturing, it could be the final work product of what should it look like? How is it going to tie all these things together? Now, why is it so important to have scope? Because if we don't define these features specifically enough, you could find that you have a wide range of things that you have to design that you did not anticipate when you originally proposed on the work. So when we talk about a bridge, we want to know, where is it? What's the span? How many spans? The number of lanes, the clearance, the loads, the materials. All these things can define the amount of work that you have to perform. And if you haven't anticipated it adequately, you could be put out of business. So when we get into the cost and the fee structure for this professional contract, it can take many forms. Sure, we want to talk about the dollars, but how do we come up with those costs? And it's defining the type of fee. So lump sum or fixed fee. This is where I might hire you as a professional student engineer to design something, and I'll give you $2,000 for it. But it doesn't matter if you've spent 10 minutes or hundreds of hours. I'm still only going to pay you $2,000, and that's what a lump sum or fixed fee is. Now, a not to exceed fee structure is where it's time and materials, but up to a set amount. So I might pay you $100 an hour, but it'll be time and materials not to exceed $2,000. And anything you spend over that is your effort that I do not pay you for. There's also line item or task order fixed fee. This could be a little more dangerous than, say, fixed fee if you feel so confident in saying, yes, I can perform this work for $2,000. But if we've identified 4 steps to get to that delivery or that scope, each of those could have a financial constraint to it. And that's where it can be more difficult, because you could be under on some, over on others, and it could be a net loss, worse than if just the whole contract was a lump sum. Time and materials. That's time and materials without a ceiling on it or a limit, so to speak. So however many hours it takes is how much time times the billing rate is what the payment will be. And then federal contracts for many of the defense projects are indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. And these are why we hear in the newspaper why some of these contracts, they just keep going for years and they're billions of dollars. Overall, we're trying to set a financial budget for the overall delivery of scope. Now, a quick review here. If we were to look from a risk management standpoint, as an engineer or consultant, which of these is probably the best scenario? Most likely time and materials. It would definitely be the indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, but we really don't run into those when we're doing traditional public works or development type of engineering work. And of course, the one in this list that has the worst aspect to it would be the line item or task order fixed fee. Fixed fee is difficult, but now when we limit the items within that scope, it gets even more challenging. Schedule. Schedule is the third of 4th professional elements of a contract. And the schedule is the time frame by which the work is to be done. We'll lay it out as a Gantt chart as shown in the exhibit. And we talk about the schedule from a standpoint, is it a guideline or is it absolute? And what are the consequences if that schedule is not satisfied? In many construction contracts, there's liquidated damages that a contractor has to pay every day they're late on the project. They might have to pay $1,000 or $2,000 because there's an impact to the public who can't use that facility now. And last but not least, in our elements of professional contracts is terms and conditions. Sometimes we refer to this as the fine print. But in the terms of conditions, we have various items like standard of care. Some of your homework touched on this, which we'll go into in the next video. It talks about indemnification, liability, negligence, and warranty. These are all some form of guarantee that has to be provided for the services that are being provided to the client. Termination clauses. What if you need to get out of this contract? What is the way that you can do that? And you spell those terms out in terms and conditions. Terms of payment. Do you only want to be paid once at the end of the job? Monthly? Quarterly? How are invoices to be identified? And this is a very important part of the contract. You could have the richest contract in the world, but if you don't get paid to the end and never finish, you haven't made a dollar. Insurance requirements. Every contract has insurance that has to be provided. Performance clauses. Maybe there's some extra services that have to be identified, or a special way that work will be provided. And that's also identified in contract terms and conditions. And when there's disputes, do you go to arbitration or do you go immediately to an attorney? How is that handled? And any other items that the client or you as the service provider may be interested in doing. So we're going to pause here before we get into the application of some of the materials.